You remember the conversation. Word for word. It happened 3 days ago. Maybe 3 weeks. Doesn't matter. Because right now, at 1 a.m., while you're supposed to be asleep, it's playing again. What you said. What they said. What you should have said. Most people would call this overthinking. They tell you to let it go, move on. But here's what they don't understand. You're not broken, you're not weak, and you're definitely not too sensitive. What's actually happening inside your mind is far more sophisticated than anyone gives you credit for, including yourself. Because the people who replay conversations aren't stuck. They're searching. And the difference between those two things changes everything about how you see yourself. Let's get into it. Here's what most people get wrong about conversation replaying. They think it's a memory problem, like your brain is glitching, stuck on repeat because something misfired. It's not. It's a safety system. Psychologists call it rumination. But that word makes it sound passive. What's actually happening is your brain detected something unresolved, a moment where the outcome felt uncertain, where you couldn't tell if you were safe, accepted, valued. And so it flagged that moment and said, "We need to go back here. We need to figure this out." This is your threat detection system doing its job. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between physical danger and social danger. To your brain, being misunderstood by someone you care about registers with the same urgency as a threat to your survival. That's not weakness. That's evolution. And it goes back further than you think. Imagine a child who learned early that saying the wrong thing had consequences. Maybe it caused conflict. Maybe it meant withdrawal of love. That child learned to replay conversations because preparation felt like protection. You were that child, and your brain never forgot that lesson. So let's break down the 5 signs that you're someone who replays conversations and what each one is actually telling you. Sign 1. You remember exactly what you said, but not what they said back. Most people assume this means you're self-absorbed, only focused on yourself. That's not what it means. It means your brain is running quality control on your own output. Researcher Martin Sereno at University College London found that the brain's language processing centers stay active long after a conversation ends, specifically reviewing self-generated speech. Not what others said. What you said. Your brain is the editor, and editors only mark up their own copy. Picture this. You had a 5-minute conversation with your manager this morning. By afternoon, you can replay your exact words verbatim. But her response? Blurry. Because your brain wasn't archiving her words. It was archiving yours, looking for anything that could have landed wrong. So instead of self-absorbed, this is actually hyper-responsible. You hold yourself to a standard most people don't even think about. Sign 2. A compliment lands for 2 seconds. A criticism stays for 2 weeks. People tell you to just focus on the positives, develop thicker skin. But this isn't thin skin. This is negativity bias in overdrive. Rick Hansen, neuropsychologist and author of Hardwiring Happiness, describes the brain as velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. This asymmetry exists because negative social feedback once had survival consequences. Being excluded from the group meant death. Your brain heard someone's offhand comment and quietly filed it under. Potential threat. You were in a meeting last Tuesday. Someone said your idea was interesting, with a pause before interesting. You've spent 6 days analyzing that pause, not because you're insecure, because your brain identified ambiguity and refused to file it away unsolved. So instead of oversensitive, this is actually a finely tuned social radar. It just needs a better off switch. Sign 3. You apologize in your head to people who don't even know you're upset. You're having full conversations inside your mind, explaining yourself, saying sorry for things no one asked you to apologize for. Most people would say you're being dramatic. You're not. You're conflict resolving in private. Psychologist Susan Nolan-Huxama's research found that people high in empathy are significantly more likely to internalize conflict resolution, playing out reconciliation scenarios mentally as a way of processing interpersonal tension without externalizing it. You were frustrated with a friend last week. You didn't say anything. But at 11 p.m., you were mentally walking through the entire thing. What you felt, why you reacted, what you wish you'd said. Not dramatic, deeply empathetic. You process outward conflict inward because you care more about the relationship than being right. Sign 4. You lie awake, replaying conversations from years ago, not just recent ones, old ones, things you said at 16, a falling out in college, a job interview where you stumbled on one answer. People would say, "Why are you thinking about that? It's ancient history," but your brain didn't let it go for a reason. Bessel van der Kolk, psychiatrist and author of The Body Keeps the Score, found that emotionally charged memories, particularly ones tied to identity and belonging, are stored with an open file tag. Unresolved. Pending. Your brain keeps returning to them not because it's torturing you, but because it genuinely believes that if it analyzes the moment long enough, it will find the answer that finally allows it to close the file. Not stuck in the past. Still trying to make sense of who you were and who you became after. Sign 5. After replaying, you feel relief, but only for a moment. You finally land on the perfect response, the thing you should have said. And for a brief second, something releases. Then it starts again. This is the Zeigarnik effect. Psychologist Roy Baumeister's finding that the brain returns persistently to incomplete tasks far more than completed ones. The relief you feel is your brain momentarily marking the file closed. But because nothing external changed, the conversation already happened. It reopens almost immediately. Not broken, just running a loop that was never designed to have an ending, unless you give it one deliberately. So, what do you actually do with this? Understand the difference between processing and replaying. Processing moves toward clarity. It has a direction. Replaying searches for certainty that doesn't exist, trying to undo something that already happened. That's not a character flaw. It's a logical impossibility your brain hasn't accepted yet. When the loop starts, ask yourself, am I processing or am I replaying? If you can't find an answer, you're replaying. Then give the loop a closing line. Something honest. Something like, I said what I said with what I knew then. That's enough. Say it out loud. The brain responds differently to spoken closure than internal closure. And remember this, replaying is not the same as caring too much. You're someone whose brain takes relationships seriously enough to keep reviewing them. That capacity for depth is not something to fix. It's something to redirect. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal is to stop searching for certainty in a past that can't answer you back. If you made it this far, that itself proves something. People who don't replay conversations don't spend 8 minutes trying to understand why they do. You're here because you take your inner world seriously. And that's not a problem to solve. That's a kind of intelligence most people never develop. Which sign resonated with you most? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this helped you see yourself a little differently, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.